The bag arrives without ceremony. No sirens, no escort, no official seal. Just a black canvas duffel, scuffed at the corners, resting on the polished floor of a government office that has seen too many quiet deals made behind closed doors. It is heavy enough that the aide who carried it in set it down with both hands, careful not to let it thud. Cash has a sound when it settles, a dull, unmistakable weight. Captain Ibrahim Traoré looks at it without moving. The ceiling fan turns slowly above him, pushing warm air across the room. Outside, the city hums with late afternoon life. Motorbikes, vendors calling out prices, the distant bark of a dog. Inside, the air feels compressed. "Who brought it?" Traoré asks. The aide swallows. "They said it was a gesture from a consortium." "Which consortium?" The aide hesitates just long enough to be noticed. "Mining interests, regional partners." Traoré nods once. He does not touch the bag. "How much?" The aide exhales. "They didn't say." Traoré finally looks up, eyes sharp. "Open it." The zipper slides back slowly. Inside, stacks of US dollars, bundled, clean, crisp. Hundreds on top, 20s beneath, organized with an efficiency that suggests experience, not desperation. Confidence. Someone wanted this to feel normal. Traoré stares at the money for a long moment, then he closes the bag. "Take it back," he says. The aide blinks. "Sir?" "Exactly as it came." The aide hesitates. "They were very clear. This was meant to help. Ease cooperation. They expect—" Traoré's voice remains calm. "They expect nothing." The aide nods, uncertain, and lifts the bag again, arms straining slightly under the weight. As he leaves, Traoré turns back to the window. The city does not know what just happened, but it will, because money has a way of making noise, even when it's refused. In Washington, the first hint of trouble arrives not through official diplomatic channels, but through a whispered aside at a closed-door briefing. A junior intelligence officer, eyes fixed on her notes, mentions an irregular financial outreach connected to Burkina Faso. A senior official looks up. "Irregular how?" "Unreciprocated," she replies. The word lands awkwardly. "Explain." "A cash delivery, significant, returned untouched." The room goes quiet. Someone leans back in their chair. "That's unusual." Another voice cuts in. "That's a message." By evening, analysts across agencies are digging. Financial intelligence units flag unusual withdrawals from regional accounts. Names surface: shell companies, intermediaries, consultants who exist only on paper and in invoices. A familiar pattern, one the US has seen play out across continents. Influence buys time. Time buys access. Access buys policy. Except this time the bag came back. On American cable news, the story breaks cautiously. Sources say Burkina Faso's military leader rejected a large cash offer from foreign-linked business interests. The anchor says careful with each word. The implications are still unclear. A former Treasury official shakes his head on screen. "You don't refuse money like that, unless you're either very principled or very confident." "And which do you think this is?" the anchor asks. The official pauses. "That's what scares people." Back in Ouagadougou, the reaction is immediate and volatile. Phones ring in darkened rooms. Meetings are cancelled, then rescheduled, then cancelled again. Men who have survived 4 governments suddenly feel exposed. One of them slams his fist on a table. "He humiliated us," he says. "He made it public." Another replies quietly, "He didn't need to, we know." Traoré does not call a press conference. He does not release a statement. The refusal is allowed to spread organically through leaks and whispers until it becomes larger than any official announcement could have made it. That night, a trusted intelligence officer approaches Traoré with a thin folder. "They're panicking," he says. "The people who sent the money, they didn't expect rejection. They're asking questions." "Good," Traoré replies. "There's more." The officer continues. "Some of the intermediaries, they're connected to security contractors. Western ones." Traoré looks up. "Which country?" The officer hesitates. "Several, but the financial routing suggests Washington won't like this." Traoré considers this. Washington rarely likes honesty. In the United States, honesty is being debated on every level. A policy memo circulates through the State Department. its language cautious but unmistakably concerned. It notes that Traoré's actions suggest an emerging pattern of resistance to established economic engagement mechanisms. The phrase is diplomatic. The meaning is not. A National Security Council advisor speaks plainly in a secure room. If he starts rejecting leverage, we lose predictability. A military analyst counters, or we gain clarity. The advisor scoffs. Clarity doesn't pay for influence. On social media, Americans react viscerally. Some praise the move as integrity in action. Others warn that refusing investment, even corrupt investment, could destabilize an already fragile region. Veterans weigh in, comparing Traoré's decisiveness to commanders they trusted, or didn't. A small business owner in Arizona watches the clip and mutters, "Imagine that, saying no." In Ouagadougou, the returned bag makes its way back through the same channels it came from. Each handoff is careful, quiet, tense. No one wants to be associated with it now. When it finally reaches its origin, a private office with frosted glass and too many flags, the mood is grim. "He's not like the others," someone says. "No," another replies, "he's worse." Traoré spends the following days under increasing pressure, subtle threats, friendly warnings, invitations to meetings that come with unspoken expectations. He declines them all. At a small internal gathering, one of his advisors speaks up. "Sir, you're isolating us, refusing that money. It could have bought goodwill." Traoré looks at him. Goodwill bought with cash is debt, and debt always comes due. The advisor says nothing more. In Washington, a classified cable notes a shift in tone among U.S. analysts. The word uncooperative begins appearing more frequently. So does unpredictable. A former ambassador goes on record. "We should be cautious about romanticizing this. Leaders who reject systems often replace them with worse ones." Another expert counters, or they expose how broken the systems are. The debate spills into think tanks, universities, op-ed pages. Burkina Faso, once a footnote, becomes a case study. Traoré remains quiet until the next move. 3 weeks later, he summons the press, not international, not foreign correspondents, but local journalists. The room is small. The lighting is harsh. On the table in front of him sits the same black duffel bag. Empty. He speaks slowly, deliberately. "This bag," he says, "was offered to me as assistance." Cameras click. "I returned it," he continues, "because assistance that asks for silence is not assistance, it is control." The room is silent. "We will work with partners," Traoré says, "but we will not be purchased." In Washington, the clip is replayed endlessly. A senior intelligence officer watches it twice, then turns to a colleague. He's forcing a choice. Between what? Between engagement on his terms or none at all. Outside the frame, consequences begin to gather. Markets react cautiously. Aid organizations pause, reassess. Security cooperation is quietly reviewed. No one wants to be the first to escalate, but no one wants to be the last to respond. Traoré knows this. That night he walks alone through the compound. The duffel bag is gone now, locked away in evidence storage. The money will eventually be traced, documented, perhaps exposed. Or buried. He stops beneath a tree and listens to the city. He knows there will be retaliation, economic pressure, political maneuvering, maybe worse. But he also knows something else. For the first time in a long time, a line was drawn that could not be blurred with cash. In Washington, a final late-night briefing ends with a single unresolved sentence. "This leader is not playing the game we built." No one offers a solution. Back in Ouagadougou, the lights stay on late in the presidential compound. Somewhere, men are already planning how to make him blink. Traoré looks out at the darkness, aware of the weight of what he's done. The bag is gone, the money untouched. The consequence is just beginning. The pressure does not arrive all at once. It comes in layers. First, the markets. Not a crash, nothing dramatic enough to draw headlines, but a hesitation. Currency traders widen their spreads. Importers delay shipments. Fuel prices tick upward by a margin small enough to explain. Traoré notices immediately. He doesn't comment. Inside the presidential compound, briefings grow sharper. Economic advisors speak more carefully, as if words themselves might trigger consequences. One of them finally says what the others are thinking. "Sir, this is coordinated." Traoré nods. "Of course it is. They want you to reconsider." The advisor continues. "Not publicly, quietly." Traoré allows himself a thin smile. "That's the problem," I already answered quietly. In Washington, the tone shifts again. A senior Treasury analyst points to a screen filled with transaction maps. "We're seeing pressure through third parties, nothing traceable directly to us, but the signal is clear." A policy official exhales. He's testing how much independence he can afford. Another voice cuts in. "Or how much we'll tolerate." No one likes that framing, but no one disputes it. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré receives another visitor. This one comes through diplomatic channels, credentials impeccable, language polished to neutrality. The envoy sits across from him, hands folded. "We respect your stance on transparency," he says, "but isolation is expensive." Traoré listens. "There are ways," the envoy continues, "to engage constructively without rejecting the system entirely." Traoré tilts his head. "The system rejected us long before I rejected the money." The envoy's smile tightens. "Idealism has limits. So does patience," Traoré replies. The meeting ends without agreement. That night, an intelligence alert flashes red. A disinformation campaign begins to surface online, subtle at first. Anonymous accounts question Traoré's motives. Rumors of hidden accounts, secret deals, foreign backers. None substantiated, all persistent. In Washington, a cyber analyst briefs quietly. "This is classic narrative pressure. Undermine credibility, make him look hypocritical." "Is it working?" someone asks. "Too early to tell," she replies, "but it's escalating." In the streets of Ouagadougou, people argue. Some believe the rumors, others don't, but everyone feels the tension. Trust once shaken never settles evenly. Traoré addresses his inner circle. "They couldn't buy silence," he says, "so they're buying noise." "What do we do?" an officer asks. "We keep receipts," Traoré replies, "and we keep moving." Days later, another revelation breaks. Documents leaked anonymously, tracing the origin of the cash offer to a web of intermediaries tied to resource extraction contracts signed years earlier. The names are familiar, the implications uncomfortable. American media picks it up fast. This raises serious questions about past engagement strategies, one analyst says on air, and whether the U.S. and its partners relied too heavily on informal influence. A former diplomat pushes back. "Let's not pretend this is unique. What's unique is that someone said no." The phrase spreads. Someone said no. For Traoré, the cost becomes personal. Security tightens. Routes change daily. Sleep comes in fragments. A trusted officer warns him quietly, "They may try something indirect." Traoré nods. "They already are." Yet he does not retreat. Instead, he authorizes an independent audit. Public, international, slow. The kind of process that can't be reversed without leaving fingerprints. In Washington, the reaction is mixed. A senior official mutters, "He's forcing transparency where we prefer flexibility." Another responds, "Or he's exposing how much we depend on shadows." The debate has no winner. One evening, Traoré stands alone in his office again. On the table sits a simple folder. Inside, photographs of the bag, the cash, the return receipt. Evidence preserved. He closes the folder and locks it away. Outside, the city hums, uneasy, alive, watching. Traoré knows the story has passed the point where it can be undone quietly. Whatever comes next will be louder, riskier, harder to control. In Washington, the final assessment of the week lands with a familiar conclusion. "This is no longer about money," the analyst writes. "It's about who decides the rules." Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré looks out into the night, fully aware that refusing a bag of cash was the easy part. What follows? Pressure, isolation, consequence, that is where leaders are measured. And somewhere, unseen, someone is already calculating how to make him reach for something he cannot afford to refuse. The attempt comes quietly, not with soldiers, not with gunfire, not even with threats. It comes as an offer, a final one. It arrives through a channel old enough to feel respectable, an intermediary with decades of experience, fluent in caution, polished by embassies and boardrooms alike. The message is simple, carefully worded, designed to sound reasonable. A development package, debt relief support, security cooperation recalibration, and tucked beneath the language of partnership, a condition that isn't written down. Don't ask where the money came from. Don't ask who signed what before. Close the file. Traoré listens without interrupting. When the intermediary finishes, he waits a long moment as if considering. The ceiling fan hums. Somewhere outside, a generator sputters back to life. You brought the bag back, Traoré asks. The intermediary hesitates. Yes. Untouched? Yes. Traoré nods. Then tell them this, he says. The answer didn't change just because the words did. The intermediary exhales, knowing what that means. You understand what follows. Traoré meets his eyes. I understand what always followed. I'm just not pretending anymore. In Washington, the rejection lands hard. Not publicly, not officially, but in the spaces where policy becomes instinct. A senior official says what no memo will ever record. He's choosing confrontation over comfort. Another replies quietly, or sovereignty over dependence. No one knows which interpretation history will favor. Pressure intensifies, but unevenly. Some programs slow, others quietly continue. Allies disagree behind closed doors. No unified response forms, only friction. Markets wobble, then stabilize. The country doesn't collapse. It doesn't triumph either. It simply continues. American media moves on, as it always does. But the clip still resurfaces now and then. The empty duffel bag on the table, the calm voice explaining why it was returned. Comment sections argue. Experts revisit old assumptions. Students cited in papers about influence and resistance. In Ouagadougou, the bag becomes something else entirely. Not evidence, not scandal. A reference point. Civil servants whisper about it. Soldiers mention it when deciding which orders to follow without question. Ordinary people repeat the story with small changes, as stories always are. Sometimes the bag is heavier. Sometimes the room is darker. Sometimes the refusal is louder. Traoré never corrects them. Late one night, alone again, he unlocks the cabinet and looks at the file one last time. Photos, receipts, proof that the easiest path was offered and refused. He closes the cabinet. Outside, the city breathes, uncertain but intact. He knows the future will not be kind or simple. The cost of saying no rarely is. He also knows something irreversible has already happened. A rule was broken, not by taking money, but by refusing it and surviving. In Washington, an analyst writes the final line of a long report and pauses before submitting it. This leader has introduced a variable we can't easily model. He deletes the next sentence. There are no predictions left to make. Back in Burkina Faso, the lights stay on, the bag stays empty, and the question, who really controls the terms of power, remains unanswered, hanging in the space between principle and consequence, where history has not yet decided what this moment will become.